Good morning. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I am Angelica with In God's Timing. I say, you all, we are in overtime. Okay? Straightforward overtime. We're seeing so many different things that continue to take place. Um, I'm noticing that a lot of people's mindset and how they think has been altered or a little off. I even noticed more and more, like I said, I don't know how many times I done did this video where I done got kicked off in the process of doing the video. Um, it's a shame for some of these platforms, how they do folk when you talk about real stuff or even just, shedding light on different things. It's nothing but control. But anywho, yes, we are in overtime, right? It's a lot of things that have taken place. It's a lot of things that are happening, still going to happen, that we overlook and brush off. A lot of times we don't want to have real conversations or talk about real life situations because it's uncomfortable, right? It's easier to settle, and a lot of times when you settle something, it puts an end to arguments. It puts an end to the controversy, the back and forth. A lot of times people want to argue and go back and forth as far as how they feel, what I feel is right, debating, which is honestly irrelevant to me, to the times that we're in. It's like a straightforward, as far as the things that we're seeing that's evident. Um, Before I even go into the gist of what I was going to talk about, I want to talk about from yesterday. So we know yesterday was Easter Sunday. We know yesterday, many people went to church. Resurrection Sunday. So one of the things I saw, and I said it's a little off to me, and I noticed that tends to happen a lot of times. And like I said, we don't want to talk about stuff, so I'm going to talk about it this morning with you. Okay? Uh, how some women are dressing, it's inappropriate for church. I was talking to somebody, I'm like, are we at church or are we at the club? So, on certain holidays, certain times we see more crowds at church, right? I don't, we welcome everybody to the church and you should want to go to church. But I said, as many as people that were there yesterday, as far as my church, I don't know about y'all church, if they were there on the regular, getting word, we may see more change and deliverance. Just picking to go to church on certain holidays or certain seasons is a little off to me. You know, it is what it is. But the main thing that I saw was the inappropriate dress. Like, I don't know if it's like body cons or just the real tight fitted dresses. And then some folk be wondering why these men be looking at other women or that's married or pastors. You got it all hanging out, at church. So even I'm thinking about it like this, is there even a standard anymore? And I'm not saying go dress, cover to your neck and all that other stuff. But having some type of conviction, okay, maybe this isn't appropriate for church, holding some type of standard. But then the thing about it is you got the ones in the church, they dress the same way. So how can you tell somebody that comes to visit church about how they dress when you got some of the ones in the church dressing the same way? Some of the women, I'm gonna tell you, too tight, too tight, too much hanging out, too much. You walk wrong. You couldn't even get the spirit because everything will be out. It's the people got to think about their motives. It's nothing wrong with looking nice. You can look nice without having everything hanging out or too provocative, right? Too revealing, I guess you can say. Having some type of standard. But I said now we're at a place where, and especially it's common in the Black church. We see it a lot. Now it's like you don't have no type of regard. And then you wonder why women will say, I don't want you around my husband. Or I don't want you around my man. Or, you need a fist pump because you're trying to get too close. Because women know women. We see each other. Come on, let's be honest and real. So we can see behind that smile and everything else when you're doing too much. You putting on a little bit too much, being too strong with it. As far as how you carry yourself, you switching too hard. To where, like I said, wearing stilettos and just the tire too tight. So when you think about it, just realistically, logically, common sense, from a man's perspective, when you looking, you expect them not to look. So it's like buying and selling. It's like selling a product. You letting everybody know it's for sale. So we give that point. We say, come as you are, and different stuff like that. But then it gets to a point with maturity, and not just in church, across the board. When you begin to mature, you have some type of, I'm talking about as far as believers, some type of your conscience, unless too many people conscience has been seared. Maybe I shouldn't wear this. Maybe this is inappropriate. Maybe this is too tight. What message does this send off? Who am I drawing? Some of it does look a little thirsty. And I guess because, like I said, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. We just glad to see them at church. But learning to be able to, sometimes you can say things without hurting somebody's feelings. That may be a little too tight. That may be too much. We get to a point where if we don't correct stuff or acknowledge it, how do we expect things to change? And then we're confused when things begin to unfold and happen where it's not even, like I said, a standard or a respect when you go into church anymore. Just realistic, right? So let me move on. So I heard this guy talking the other day when I was listening to this video, and he was talking about how many of us that look like me, how we are destroying ourselves, destroying our culture, and destroying the next generation. And it sat on me for a little while because, some people say something, it has truth to it, right? But I'm in my mind, I'm like, Lord, the devil is a lie. Help us to mature and grow into who you called us to be, holding each other accountable. And that's one of the things, basically, what I got from what he was saying, how as men, we don't hold each other accountable. How parents, women holding each other accountable. We see stuff, but we ignore it and we brush it off, or even we do things, but because we ashamed, what parent or what individual wants to see their children fail or see them out there, turned out and turned up? Nobody wants to see that for the most part. But if you don't correct or acknowledge anything, how can you expect anybody to change? So basically, we're more concerned about somebody's comfort. And we've seen over the past few years how your comfort can be touched because of the things that we do, the things that we touch, the things that we continue to be in agreement with. But then a lot of people, at the same time, end up fearful or scared when things begin to happen. That's like a contradiction. It's like we help add fuel to the fire, but then when the fire really begins to burn, everybody's coughing and, with the smoke, or getting burnt up in the fire because you didn't take it seriously. So when I say that, I mean, we have to get to a point where some type of responsibility and accountability is taking place. So a lot of times we get to a point where, like I said, even parents, like I said, you don't want to hold your children accountable. You don't want to say anything because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But then when I hear certain conversations, like when the guy was saying that we're destroying ourselves and our own people, it had truth to it. Because when you look around and you look at the evidence, you see a lot of broken people. You see a lot of broken homes. You see a lot of dysfunctional thinking, just mindsets, because of now we're at a place where things have matured. Wickedness has matured. Bitterness has matured. Our sins have matured. So much is at a maturity level to where it's grown. So because we didn't address certain things, we didn't acknowledge it, because we didn't want to talk about it, now we're seeing things being heightened on all levels across the board. So when I think about it, we promote a lot of wicked stuff. We have to call it for what it is. When you get to a point where, especially as parents, okay, we have to take responsibility as parents, as adults. And that's what I've noticed. We have a generation of so many immature children, the youth, even adults. So then we question where they're getting it from. But we still have to take in consideration as parents, those skeletons that's in the closet, those things that we didn't want to talk about and address because I'm doing it. How can I say anything to you? That's why we need to clean up, first of all. But debts being collected, We know when you have debts, that's money that was owed, things that are past due. I mentioned that we're in overtime. So when debts have to be collected, I think about Rumpelstiltskin's. So the other day I was watching, I think it was like Shrek with my kids or whatever. And Rumpelstiltskin's, he had Shrek sign a deal. It was so enticing, it sounded good or whatever. How so many people would sign their life away for comfort, for money, for fame, for fortune, regardless of who they affect along the way. I'm just worried about how I can move on or how I can progress in life. It doesn't matter who it affects, right? And then sometimes you have verbal agreements. And we agree to stuff just because we don't say anything. You know, sometimes not saying anything at all is just as bad. It's power in agreement. So when I think about Rumpelstiltskin and him always coming for his payment, remember Satan. You signed the deal, you signed the contract. So a lot of times we will put our 2 cents in on stuff, or we will put a stamp on it because we don't want to correct it. But then when I was talking about things being matured and coming back around, then that's when the tears are flowing. That's when the confusion, I don't understand, why is this happening to my family? You saying funeral after funeral. A lot of people in my community are talking about mental health now. That's when I talk about stuff being matured. So many things have happened that we didn't discuss or talk about, and now it's mature. So now you're talking about people trying to deal with stuff, deal with issues, hurt and pain. And then taking in consideration, when I talk about accountability, when things keep happening over and over again, like I said, a lot of times people will push stuff on other people or be in denial, I guess, of things that happen in their lives from their from trauma, their upbringing, parents, choices we make throughout life. We have a generation of bastards. So many things have become normal, especially in our community. A lot of stuff we weren't taught. We weren't raised to, promote marriage or healthy relationships. So a lot of times things that we do is learn behavior. We adapt to our environments. We adapt to things that we see. We mimic what we see. We may not notice it in the moment, but we end up doing that on top of being in agreement with other people. When I was talking to somebody recently, when we were talking about how we have tolerated so many different things where, like I said, it's become normal, but at the same time, it's dysfunctional. So where it's become common to be single parents. And some single parents may have been because of, maybe divorce, and now the woman or the man is a single parent. So it's not always just the children out of wedlock, but what is a bastard? It's a child of parents who weren't married. That's a common thing that we see, especially in our community. And with it becoming normal, we're seeing the effects of it. So you see a lot of women and men going back and forth with the bickering and the fighting. But as far as accountability part, we don't really see that. You see it with some, but what is mainstream posted, or what you see from the common social media things, is everybody pointing the finger. Not realizing too, that many things we do pick up from our parents. We talk about those skeletons in the closet. We think this stuff just happened overnight. We try to figure out, where do I get this from? It does pass down. But because it wasn't talked about, how can you talk about it with your son or your daughter? Or what makes you want to acknowledge it? It is a possibility. So when people assume that this generation is supposed to just know, I was talking about that too with somebody. And there's a lot of different things. I have a lot of real conversations with folk, how a lot of stuff we didn't know. So when we get in relationships or we get in different things, if you're not taught, hey, you need to focus on marriage or being courted, not having children yet, making sure you get to know the person, or even just with life, finances, different things that we weren't taught and we missed out on, then when we get the residue of it or the consequences of it, it's because we missed it. So when I see a lot of things that are taking place or that are unfolding, a lot of things come for bitterness, division. selfishness. And because there is a lot of denial, like I said, what parent wants to hear that, my child is wrong or they're not doing right? I won't say any good parent, but a true parent that really cares about their children will correct them when they're wrong. That's a part of disciplining. I'm not talking about abusing, but a part of disciplining your children. So you have a generation that hasn't been told no, a generation of fatherless children. So we know that the Father helps give identity. For those of us that are believers, we know that Christ helped give us identity, walking in our purpose and who he's really called us to be. Even though we've been a little dusty, then messed up, all them made mistakes or whatever, when we begin to draw closer to him, he allows us to see who we are in Christ. Because we have a lot of people that will put a stereotype on us. So we start living out what we've been told that we are, as far as if you're not nothing or you're nothing but a baby mama or you'll never be anything. It's a horrible thing to hear. So when you keep hearing certain things over and over again, it affects how you think. It affects how you function. And that's one of the common things we hear. And like I said, when I even hear women talk and some of them get frustrated, I'm like, well, you see a lot of women that will, even myself in the past, you'll blame men for everything, but you don't take your and give an account for your part. It's more women that are raising men, that are raising boys. But then you say this man ain't nothing and he ain't nothing, but who's raising them? So with us being nurturers, with us being more emotional and raising more men and boys, especially in the Black community, what do you end up seeing? Those same characteristics that have been placed on our men, placed on our boys. Very emotional. This generation, you say anything wrong to them, they trigger off. So that's why I say it's so important to take consideration. You keep pointing the finger, but we are a part of the change as far as women, especially in the Black community. We are a part of the change. But that's the thing. Each side has to take accountability for their part. But yes, it's unfortunate that we've been in bad situations, but then sometimes you have to think about what caused you to date them? What caused you to make certain choices? That's why it's important did you learn from life situations or encounters that happen? So we see the same cycles and patterns happening. It's like, okay, now when you keep doing it over and over again, that's for men, women, whoever, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and self-reflect. So then we're hollering, this is not fair, and this is we have a lot of injustice. But then when you look at it, we got to look at ourselves. A lot of this dysfunctional stuff that's happening. But then when your kids get touched or families get touched and generational curses begin to arise, we act like it's foreign, it's unfamiliar. But we've been seeing it generation after generation. So last week I was led to read Joel. And that's the thing too. A lot of things that we weren't taught in church, a lot of things that we weren't taught in school that was basically hidden, it was kept from us that we weren't aware of. And study to show yourself approved. More people are starting to do that now. But that, even with that, you have to give an account as leaders, as different people, teaching the people, teaching the sheep, and then the sheep maturing. Even with pointing a finger like that with church, with pastors and leaders, at some point you need to take some type of responsibility, even with going to church, even with having your own relationship with God, knowing that we're still human, the pastor's still human, but we put such high expectations on everybody else, like the lack of accountability or responsibility in your part as an individual, or even as just a human, knowing that you contribute to some of the stuff that you're dealing with. All of us, different things that we're seeing, the impact of different things that are happening. When I was talking about adding fuel to the fire, helping increase the heat. So when you become numb and you ignore a lot of stuff, I just got time, and it's nothing. But then we're seeing a lot of the same results, funeral after funeral. We're seeing a lot of results of broken homes, children battling and fighting and taking themselves out of here, dealing with a lot of stuff. So if we know and recognize that we've dealt with stuff from our previous generation, or our parents, that should make you strive to want to do better for your own. So when I was in Joel or whatever, and I'm gonna put it in my own words, you can go read it on your own time. In chapter 1, it talks about the different locusts. So first it starts out talking to the elders, basically telling them, and this was the prophet Joel talking, have you not seen some of these things before that you're seeing in your generation, right? The different things that the locust has eaten up each generation. So when you think about that, locusts are basically bugs, okay? They destroy crops. They destroy stuff. So when you think about from the generation aspect of, just in layman's terms, how many different things have destroyed our generations going forward, even backward, right? That's happened over and over again. So basically, even just like with Proverbs, putting your kids, I won't say on the game, but preparing them. Hey, since I went through this or I experienced this, I need you to watch out. It's a detour up ahead. If you do this, having kids out of wedlock or not getting to know a person or getting to know people, dealing with your own issues, it can affect you later on down the road. But because we didn't have certain conversations, each generation, things have been destroyed. So when it talks about what the locusts had left the prior generation, you think about even through history, things that our ancestors have fought for, how the next generation has destroyed. Basically, even just the mindset, right? Don't appreciate anything, tearing each other down, tearing down businesses, don't uplift each other. Broken homes, the same patterns continuously over and over again. But then we're confused to why we keep getting the same results. I heard somebody tell me that she had a gentleman tell her, older white man tell her, basically that he didn't see many of us no more than servants. This individual was, she's starting her own business, she's starting to make moves and stuff. And he was like, why would you do that? And I'm just like, wow, he said that out loud. But when you think about it, it's a lot of people that feel that way. It's many people, too many, let's say it like that. I ain't gonna say everybody, that don't want to see you succeed, don't want to see you prosper. Even sometimes people that look like you. And we may say one thing, but your actions speak volumes. So when you continue to do the same stuff, whether it is tearing down people, doing shady stuff, because you got a lot of folk now that would do shady stuff, like behind the scenes stuff, just to see you fail. Want to see your family fail. Want to see your kids fail. And some stuff, like I said, of our own doing. Like the guy said, we end up destroying our own selves. So when you have the situation that comes on, like I said, when he was saying he's seeing mostly only us as to serve, I'm like, wow. But when you think about it, when you look around, that's what most of us do. Whether it be housekeeping, trash people, whatever it is, which are honest jobs, still. But to hear somebody say it out loud, that I don't see you nothing more than a servant, that I want my grandkids, this is what I want them to do. I'm going to leave businesses for them. Now, mind you, this is for real. Like somebody said this out their mouth for real. Older white man. I want my kids, my kids and grandkids to prosper. But you don't see the same thing for me, for somebody else. So to know how people really feel, but that's why I say I like to know people's true colors. I like to know how you really feel. But to hear these things over and over again, I guess now it's starting to hit differently because it's more common that we're hearing, or people's actions are showing us that they really don't care. So even when I think about our people's mindsets and how we even think, when the guy was saying that we're tearing down our own people or destroying our own generation, and when that scripture came to me about the locusts and each generation, things being ate up and destroyed and the devastation, that's actually what we have been seeing in reality. As soon as we try to build and grow, it gets tore down, either from other people or from our own selves. So when you have a lot of parents that will point the finger, and I say this all the time to a lot of people, you still got to take in consideration, how did you contribute? But you have some parents that, yes, they try to do the best for their kids. And, we make mistakes. We do our own thing. We get to a place where we ignore stuff. So it's not always the parents, too. So we have to, that's why I say taking accountability for your part. But then that's why I say when I see a lot of women that will point the finger and talk about this and that, when your son is young or your kids are young, oh, that's my baby, he don't do no wrong. Like we have that saying where women will coddle their boys and push their girls. But then when you end up dating the very thing or someone like the very child that you raised, as far as like a man, say you babied your son, bought him everything that he wanted, never held him accountable. So when he becomes an adult, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be the same thing. So then you end up having a woman that wasn't taught or learned either. Come on, cycles and patterns, generational curses, ends up being with another man. You end up in debt. You end up doing more for that man, trying to basically be his mother instead of being a partner, instead of working together or looking forward towards marriage. We weren't taught that. So then when you think about even with scripture, when you have the mother-in-laws and the daughter-in-laws that have those rivalries, things that we actually see. Why does that happen? Because that's my baby. He don't do no wrong. But then when accountability begins to come in, because we didn't own our part and take responsibility, that's when we begin to see things begin to uncover. A lot of emotional men, emotional women. This is why I be telling women, how can you point the finger when you don't take responsibility either? Even dealing with your own issues, your own trauma. So when we get in relationships, same thing with men. You get in relationship with people, we end up doing the same stuff. So then we have a generation, like I said, especially in our community, fatherless children. So if your parents were shady or did a lot of undermining things, but then they may change or mature, right? Them skeletons in the closet. But then your child starts doing it. You trying to figure out, why are they doing it? I don't understand. But you did it. It's just on steroids. A lot of stuff that we see when I say it's mature, stuff that our parents did and our ancestors did. Oh, these generations, it's just on steroids. It's just on another level. Too high, too far. But it's easier to deny it. You've had adults that I remember even growing up that talked about children in your families, in the school system. They talk about each other. And you think kids don't hear that, and then you'll see adults now and say, I remember when this teacher said I wasn't going to be anything, or my aunt or cousin or whoever, I remember them talking about me as a child. And then you wonder why families become divided. So a lot of these things overflow into people's jobs, into their relationships. So basically, you got a lot of hurt people hurting people. But because some may have cleaned up, I don't want to acknowledge that I did some wrong. I messed up. I may have contributed to some of your dysfunction. It's easier for me to just act like nothing ever happened. So then you have a lot of people that's hurt, broken, and damaged, trying to figure out how to continue the same, continue just to live. But when you get to a point when you tolerate so much over and over again, and like I said, so many things that we haven't addressed or we didn't talk about, a lot of things that we didn't know. Like I said, even just from the word of God, with certain scriptures people taught on, even just for the love of money, how the praises of men and the praises of people will get you messed up out here. Knowing your own heart, okay? What's your motives? So like I said, when you talk about accountability, that's why I say we've all had bad experiences from somebody, from some type of friendship, relationship, children. Everybody's been hurt. But at some point, when do you heal? Or when do you want to grow? So when you get to a place where you see the same stereotypical things happening or the same things occurring or whatever, now it's at a point where do you want to be made well? Do you really want to see change? Is it more comfortable to live the way you want to live? Because it costs. It's more parents burying their children, not just young children, their adult children. So when the scripture in chapter 1 of Joel talks about basically warning the next generation of things that can destroy your generation, destroy your lives, destroy your families, things that we miss, warning the next generation. So now we see an uprising of more people, younger adults that are talking about things that they experienced, things that they went through, how God has brought them out, how it's a lot of stuff that they missed, telling the truth, being honest, because, we act like everything is so perfect and everybody just woke up like this and didn't go through trials and tribulations or trauma, become so tolerant of it. So now you have a generation that's actually talking about different things that they experienced that you normally wouldn't share with people, things that you were ashamed of, things that people talk about. But then you have those very ones that hide everything, that don't want to talk about, that are really losing their mind. Because when you hold in so much baggage, so much stress, hurt and pain, whatever it is, at some point it's going to come out. It's going to overflow. You end up projecting your irritations, your frustrations on other people, your hate, whatever it is, you end up projecting it out. So when it goes into chapter 2 of Joel, it talks about when Joel and God is speaking to him, basically speaking to his people, that everything that had been stolen. This is the part, that's why I want to bless you, because, folk, get depressed and stuff, don't want to hear the real stuff, but then things are happening. Don't always not want to eat real food, okay? Eating junk all the time. We want to hear those things that pacify us and make us feel good all the time. But then we seeing traumatic things happening. You're not going to always hear what you want to hear. You shouldn't want to always just hear what sounds good, what feels good. I don't care for those type of people around me that always tell me what I want to hear. Pat you on the back or give you a cookie because you feel like, praise me. Don't tell me I'm wrong. But then we having balloon releases weekly, where people having all these different things happening on a regular. And we're just like, what's going on? Until you acknowledge what's really happening, you won't see. It ain't easy. It's a pill to swallow. That's why I say, who wants to know about bad stuff or, that I made a mistake? Who wants to say I'm wrong? We see that across the board. Nobody wants to say they're wrong. They would justify their mistakes every time. So one of the reasons you got to think about why God has been cleaning up his people and getting us to a place to address those skeletons, those elephants that's been roaming everywhere, to prepare us. He ain't preparing us for nothing. I told you we in overtime. It's been over 400 years. 2019 made 400 years. We in 2022. But because God is a merciful God, because he loves us and cares about us, he gives us opportunity. But because many take their grace period for granted, or you think just because you went to church Easter Sunday, or because, you go every now and again, but you don't really try to make no changes in your life, changes with your family, changes for yourself. So it can be a reflection of your children, because everything we do is a reflection of our children, even our parents. Even though you may make some choices on your own, it's a reflection. It gets passed down. So anywho, with chapter 2, it talks about him restoring what the locust and the cankerworm and what has destroyed our his people, the different things that have destroyed Israel, God's people, that he will restore it back. That blessed me. But to know that too, it speaks about everyone being held accountable. We always hear about the rapture and everything else, and a lot of people still here unless it was their time or prematurely they out of here. But I wasn't taught on the day of the Lord like that, or just even judgment. As far as even the nations, that wasn't taught. I don't hear that quite often. It's a select few that I've heard even talk about that, or even those scriptures in the Bible were prophecy that we see and actually taking place and happening now. When nations rise against nations, the division as far as the different people groups, prophecy manifesting. We're not talking about that stuff. A lot of things people are talking about is being blessed with your husband, being blessed with houses and cars, while all these different things are unfolding. So you want those things, but then you don't want to change. So then you see a lot of people get stuff by lying and cheating and robbing and corruption. And when I mentioned, like I said, a generation of bastards, and you think men and women not going to be held accountable, everybody. But to hear the word and read it and digest it, to know that God will restore those things that were stolen. This is why it's important to share stuff with each generation. Look at how much that we've seen from past history that we've been stripped of. This generation don't even respect or care about anything. But then folk will march about Black Lives Matter. Now, do they really? If it doesn't matter in your own community, in your own household. That's why I say we've seen so much throughout history where we get played, manipulated from generation to generation, how we've been used. And we fall in the suit and feed into the narrative. And families is broken and dysfunctional as all outdoors because we still don't want to acknowledge. We want to be in the in crowd. You see all these different things unfolding. Even like I said, you might as well say buying and selling. I said, you got women so far left, men so far left, too many. But then you have a select few that are actually waking up and paying attention, because at some point, looking at the evidence, like if you just really take a second and look around, and to even know that we're in a world that doesn't want to see us succeed, that really seriously things have been set in place. I think that is a whole reality, boy, on another level, to know that you really got many folk that don't want to see you prosper, don't want to see you grow, don't want to see your children do well. But they tell you what you want to hear, so you fall for it. So when I say when you tolerate so much for so long, it gets to a point now where, what is it? It's nothing to conversate about. I said, Lord, let your will be done. This is why the whole part of the purpose was us cleaning up, us correcting each other in the church, correcting each other in our families and our households. How much time do you feel like you need it? We take our grace periods for granted. When you've been given time over and over again to pay a bill, or over and over again somebody's giving you opportunity to make better decisions, and you choose not to, that was your choice. So when things happen and unfold, or you use people or abuse people, you see a lot of that manipulation. But then you want somebody to feel sorry for you. That's why I say I pray for people. The word says, pray for those that despitefully use you, but move out the way. But when the word talks about the very things that other nations have done to God's people, I will bring it back on you. We don't talk about that part. That don't preach well in church, I guess, huh? Especially if you done sign certain deals and you getting certain money, and you don't want to talk about that. But we talk about you reap what you sow and karma, right? We've all seen that happen in our own personal lives. We've seen it happen across the board. When you keep robbing and stealing, or different lifestyles you take on, how you treat people, it comes back, right? So we'll tolerate that part. We'll tolerate, basically when you be passive, be quiet, don't say anything. How long? It gets to a point where enough is enough. So that means when he tells us to prepare naturally and spiritually, preparing your households, preparing your mind, because when things happen and pop off, that's a lot mentally, even spiritually. I don't care who you are, as far as believers, anything that, especially when it becomes severe and traumatic, the reality of it, you can read it all day in the word, you can hear about it, but when things actually happen, you gotta have your mind wrapped, okay? Fasting and praying. God is preparing us all this time. I'm seeing more parents, and it's hurting my heart that, and like I said, when the guy was saying about us just destroying ourselves and destroying our people, I'm like, well, wasn't that the plan? Or isn't that the plan? So when you look around, even just with the evidence of things that have been taking place from generation to generation, It's been meaning we've been meant to be destroyed on different levels. We've seen that happen throughout history. So really, that is one of the moments when you can say that's how you really feel. As far as people, they want to see us destroyed. So if you see that and we know that, you still follow. It's very unfortunate, the amount of blindness. The word talks about Israel is blind. But we're seeing our people going by the numbers, old and young, remembering that things are still spiritual. So whether it be disease, sickness, things that pass by or pass through generation to generation, even familiar spirits, we end up in relationships or certain things that have happened, like with our parents, abusive relationships, kids out of wedlock, unhealthy homes, different things that pass throughout generation that we've ignored because we didn't talk about it. It was uncomfortable. You know how we do a lot of times, we point the finger, this person did this and they did that, but then you thought you was perfect. So then you have parents that have lived through their children. If this one child made it and they good, I'm going to push up that child. But you forget about the other ones. And then you wonder why you have sibling rivalry. That's why I say it's important to address stuff for what it is. Call things out for what they are. But it's like in the back of many people's mind, it's like many people are waiting just for the music to break out, to just, I don't know what for waiting for. If people have done the same thing over and over again, we know this from our everyday life. They just showed you who they are. And you expect them to change. If they have given you no evidence, no fruit, and you still expecting them to change, it doesn't work like that. They've already showed you who they are. So the biggest thing is for us is to hold each other accountable as men and as women. But then not being a hypocrite at the same time, because how can you try to correct somebody else when you're not even dealing with your issues? When I say you got a lot of women, like I said, that are raising men, but then you talking about them because you dated somebody else's son that another mother raised, or either the father's not being where they need to be. That goes for both sides. Not being held accountable. But at the same time, pouring out, oh, woe is me, wanting pity. So when God begins shifting things and how things are shifting, when he says that he will restore those things back, and he allows things to happen to draw us back in. He doesn't want calamity and destruction to happen. But sometimes we know with many of us, it took some hardships. It took real life to happen to draw us back to Christ as far as believers. Folk don't even want to say the name Jesus anymore. We don't even realize that all the different things that are tampered with. But it seems like it's okay. I would be nervous to follow suit with the in crowd, to follow what everybody else is saying because I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or, everybody else is going that way. It may cost you a whole lot more than you want to take on because you don't want to correct somebody. So whenever you're doing or walking in your purpose and what God has for you, things will come. The word says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added on to you. So I'm like, people going to church, you quoting scripture, you saying everything that sounds good, or what some people say is cliche, but you're not really walking in it. But you smile and kiki and put on a front for everybody, but you're not even living it. So you wonder why people will say you're a hypocrite. Whoever that is, not just a church, I'm talking about in general. So even we go on our jobs and different things, and I even see more people, when I even look at them, it's like you can tell, you can sense it, that that shadiness, or just, I'm very observant. So you can even tell when some people, like when I went out to eat or went to certain places to travel, it gets irritating where you already get this preconceived notion of you. Okay. Like I said, those stereotypes. Everybody's not ghetto. Everybody's not a bad person, but we get put in a box that we're all the same. We don't get a fair opportunity, right? A fair chance to know that you're different. So you have some of us, you make mistakes, do the wrong thing, and you try to bounce back, and it's like no recovery. But then you'll see other people do the same exact things or worse. And they'll say, oh, well, they had issues. And they wonder why things aren't being judged, why things are being judged and held accountable. This is why I say it's important for our people to acknowledge stuff, even as adults and parents. But at the end of the day, when you're at the age of accountability and you know right from wrong, you know. So when I hear these topics about some of these women, I said, you make some of us look bad. Just about the stuff some folk be saying. I just be like, Lord have mercy. Them be the ones everybody following be saying stupid stuff. Just not even common sense. Like, I don't understand. Like I said, no, just no accountability. Taking no, if you keep laying down with person after person, but then you blaming the man, you got to take accountability for your part. It takes two people to have kids. Even when you think about from the aspect of, you get to a place where it's okay for one person to do everything. And you see that common with women. Overdo it, single parent, tired. And a lot of times how they say men go on with their lives. I've even heard growing up where the mothers are saying, those are your kids, even though it takes two people to have kids. Not taking equal responsibility as parents, as adults. That's the real part. You have more immature adults. So when we see the maturity of this wickedness or the kids going wild or the youth and the generation, how can you expect them to be mature if you got so many adults that are immature? So we expecting something that we don't even give. So like I said, as things begin to unfold, I thank God for knowing that he's a redeemer of the time, but it gets to a point where what's the conversation about? Because it's been over 400 years. Folks still doing the same thing. Even when he addresses about the foreigners, no longer rising up over us. Different things that we see. That's why, look, this is why I serve God. When you actually really begin to read and study and he lead and guide you, it's a lot of stuff that we weren't taught or talked about. And we see how so much is being pushed on this generation that is like, because we've been in agreement with so many different things from the perversion and all these other things that's being pushed on our kids. And like I said, even using us to be a distraction, using us to help lead our people astray. If you listening to stuff that is talking about shooting and killing and all this stuff, then you see it happening with people are confused. Why are you confused? People mimic what they see, what they do. We open up the doors. As I said, adding fuel to the fire. So when you begin to point your finger at your kids, or because you hadn't hold yourself accountable, or your grown kids, or your grown sons or daughters, or yourself, don't be confused when things happen. Because that's what happens a lot of times. We try to figure out why is this happening, but we won't ever self-reflect and look at what is the root of this issue. Why is this person spazzing out? Have you know the maturity of the mental health that's going on right now in our community? That's all we hear right now. That's what I mean when I say things have matured. Those sins of the father that passed down to the third and fourth generation, they're mature now. So now you got a lot of people trying to cope, trying to deal with life, just trying to function. A lot of stuff that many of us missed. But when you mature, you can have certain conversations like, okay, hey, I missed it right here. I need help. Can you tell me where I messed up at? Or certain things that I didn't learn growing up. We have to do that now just in friendships and relationships, even in parenting. Especially in our community, because when you weren't taught how to be a parent or saw how to be a parent, how can you be a parent? A father or a mother? Learn behavior. So even we pick up certain mindsets from different environments, learn behavior. So if you don't have some type of example or somebody being honest and true, you're going to keep doing the same stuff. But I understand that God allows things to happen to get our attention because we are a rebellious generation. That's what the Bible speaks about. We see that. A rebellious and adulterous generation. What is an adulterer? Sleep with somebody else's husband. That's like the new thing. It's cool to be a hoe and a thought. It's cool to have all these kids out of wedlock. No, it's not. No, it's not okay for all this dysfunctional injustice. No, it's not. So that's when I'll be like, Lord, have mercy on us. Forgive us for we know not what we do. But I understand some things have to take place to get our attention. So it's been an uprising I see as positive people that God has been using in different ways and their gifts and their assignments and their talents to help speak to the generation. Because you think about a lot of our parents when they're older, or even just some other people, you get stuck in your ways, right? You become numb. You don't want to acknowledge anything. You're too calloused, hard-hearted. Nobody can get through to you. You have some people that are like that and going to be like that, where they feel like they're not wrong. They're not going to acknowledge it. They're not going to apologize. That's why it's important to guard your heart. But it's important to be accountable for your part. So when you're at an age of accountability, all of us have to take responsibility as an adult. Because you got a lot of people, like I said, they get things the wrong way. So you'll feel like you've succeeded, even women. If you see that a man is not taking care of his kids, I see that too much. You'll have some women say, well, as long as he's taking care of mine, you sound silly. What woman should want to be with a man that's not taking care of his kids? Or even a man being with a woman that's not taking care of her kids? A man should add value to you, right? Get into a place of even maturity when I say with the men and women taking responsibility. This is why it's good to sit down and chill out. Because you're hearing more people talking about, I wish I would have waited. I wish I would have learned before I had kids. I would have got married first. And like I said, a lot of people in our community, we weren't taught that. So we end up with a lot of head bustings, a lot of scars, a lot of hurt. But I'm not okay with when you got parents and you got people that get in a relationship and you still, at some point, when do you learn? When you don't hold yourself accountable, even somebody that you friends with or in a relationship with. Like that's not cool. And then you wonder why you keep getting the same results. Change only comes when you begin to change. When you condone wrong, you just as wrong as that person. So anywho, y'all be blessed. Y'all have a wonderful day. As I said, we in overtime. We've been given ample amount of time and opportunity across the board. Even God warning his people to clean up, come out of our sin, start working on ourselves. It's a heart thing. He's giving ample amount of opportunity for those who owe debts, that have done God's people wrong. We see it. We still see it. But justify it. Make excuses. This is why he wants us to move out of the way so he can judge it. Like I said, it's different when it comes to your household. And God is a just God, that people don't think about that wrathful side when he says, I will do unto you what you did unto them, reaping what you sow. So then when we see things happen, unforeseen sicknesses and disease and people, family getting touched, this is why it's important to pray and wake up. But at the same time, we move out the way. Ask God to have mercy on them, on your family and your people and those. But sometimes you got to let people go. You can't make anybody change. But you can work on yourself. Continue walking in your purpose. Continue wanting to grow. Not being shady. Supporting other people. Like I said, we want to see change, but then we don't make the necessary adjustments to help build, to help grow as a people. But we sit back watching. It hurts my heart. Seeing person after person, all different ages, being taken out of here, or just losing it. It comes to a time when judgment. When you've been told over and over again, like a parent, I keep correcting, you choose not to listen, you've made your choice. Especially when you know better. You know right from wrong. People can say what they want to say, but at the end of the day, it's something you be like, oh, I probably shouldn't do this, or I probably shouldn't wear this, or I probably need to check this. Oh, your conscience has been seared. Oh, you don't care. Sometimes we get to that point where we don't care. You get so nonchalant, like we don't care. And then we're seeing the same results happening. innocent people. So you all be blessed. Y'all have a wonderful day. It is so important to take responsibility and accountability for yourself, and holding others accountable, male and female. All right. So y'all be blessed. I will talk to you all.